an outlaw with a violent past.
He is basically a one-man crime wave.
He had no intention of being caught without a fight.
A victim like no other.
The absolute greatest fear. Somebody's taken one of your own.
Police will stop at nothing to catch a cop killer.
It was going to be everybody at the same task.
You want to make sure he's punished for what he did.
Every police officer in that moment isn't frightened. He's enraged.
Get the f*** down!
The thin blue line is a line between the predators and the preyed upon. It's the line between the good people and the bad people. Policemen are on that line. You don't surrender. The fight goes on. It goes on.
Detective James Dobbins and his wife Elaine are tired and hungry after a 12-hour road trip.
Hey, come on in, guys. Want to sit here? It's all right?
He was a police officer in Texas. Destination theoretically was Denver so that he could apply for a new job as an officer there.
They were in there eating. But then he heard a gunshot.
Get down! You okay? All right, you guys stay down.
And he, cop instinct, made sure that everybody was down. And then stood up and ran out to see what was up.
Dobbins is relieved to see there's already an officer on scene.
Officer! Fellow police! Officer, can I help?
He saw a cruiser,
Officer,
but he couldn't
can
figure
I
out where the
help?
cop that went with it was. So he went around and he could see the cop just bleeding out.
Hang in there, buddy. I'm gonna get you some help. Officer down. Car 83. Officer down.
Across town, Joe Kenda is about to be called to the scene of yet another shooting, but in a new role, sans his usual suit and tie.
In 1980, I was moved from homicide to patrol division and was promoted to the rank of sergeant. I would have a team of 8 officers who worked for me, and on December the 6th, 1982, I was working on the northwest side of the city.
Dispatch to all cars, officer down. Car 83, officer down.
The radio exploded with activity. Everybody knows what officer down means. The greatest fear, the absolute greatest fear. Somebody's taken one of your own.
And Car 83 holds special significance for Kenda.
Yeah. Just don't look too close.
I was aware that Mark Dabling was assigned that car because Dabling worked for me.
Becomes a problem later on.
He's a member of the team, myself and 8 sworn officers in uniform. He's one of us. He is all of us.
My heart sunk when first I heard an officer was shot, and then when I realized it was Mark, it was difficult.
It's shocking when it's a friend of yours. It's even more so, but you have a job to do. It was hard to continue to have to answer other calls for service and not knowing.
Kenda is halfway to the scene when he gets another call. It seems the top brass have other plans for him.
Dispatch 4 Paul 1. 4 Paul 1, do you copy?
That was my radio call sign.
Go for 4 Paul 1.
4 Paul 1, you are directed to proceed to Penrose Main Hospital. Meet the ambulance and assist the family members.
4 Paul 1, roger that.
That pained me greatly. I am chafing at the bit to be part of this investigation. I'm not in the homicide division. I did as instructed. I was determined to do the appropriate thing for the family as best I could.
As Kenda changes course and heads to the hospital, patrol officers at the scene are surrounding Officer Mark Dabling's cruiser.
When I got on the scene, we had an influx of officers and detectives that showed up to help.
So what do we have so far?
Not much. Before the call came in, Officer Devlin had made a traffic stop.
Mark Dabling was conducting routine patrol, announced he was making a traffic contact.
83, 1025.
I would doubt that Mark Dabling thought anything of stopping somebody for an illegal left turn.
So whoever was in the car shot him.
It seems that way. At any rate, at this time, he's at the hospital with a single gunshot wound to the back.
How bad is it?
It's very bad.
Not far away, Sergeant Kenda is bracing himself for a difficult assignment.
Doctor, I'm here for the wounded officer.
They should be here any minute.
Doctor, step.
It's not a stranger. Not somebody I don't know. It's somebody who works for me and somebody I know well. It is a sinking feeling in your stomach. It's absolutely beyond awful. Penrose, Maine generally is very quiet. This night, the emergency room is chaos. People asking everybody, how's the officer? How's the officer? My first job getting there was to try to bring some level of control to this. The first step was to throw the press out.
I'm sorry, folks, but we need a little bit of privacy. We'll give you an interview as soon as possible. If I could ask you to step out. Thank you.
And they left. That eliminated one crowd. The officers were there. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I understand you're upset. So am I. This is not the moment.
Mark's mother and girlfriend will be here any minute. I need you to keep it together for him. Be strong for him. Help me here, please.
Yes, sir. And they complied.
Can you two keep an eye on the press, make sure they don't come back in here? We'll let them know a public information officer will be in here soon. And all these civilians, can you get their names, find out why they're here? And if they're here for Mark, can you find out how they heard about the shooting? Thanks.
So we've got everybody doing something. We had taken chaos and reduced it to a little more manageable situation.
Sir, are you the one in charge here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. The doctor asked me to let you know that unfortunately he didn't make it.
It was then I knew he was no longer with us.
Thank you. I'll let everyone know I just need a moment.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Mark Dabling was an excellent officer, a very nice fellow. He was 30 years old. Everybody was friends with Mark Dabling.
He liked hiking, liked the outdoors. He was a history buff. He had a passion for police work. He was a mentor of mine.
I had a lot of respect for him. He was fair. He was honest. I mean, he could have been the poster boy for the CSPD recruiting ad.
I went and took a quick look at Mark, just a quick look. I couldn't deal with more than a quick look. I couldn't.
A fellow cop murdered in the line of duty. And at this point, there's nothing Kenda can do about it.
You want to do anything and everything you can to be part of the capture, part of the resolution of this nightmare that is eating away at you because in your heart you know it could be you. And yet I knew I couldn't be part of that investigation, and I wouldn't be.
Word of Dabling's death spreads quickly through the ranks of city officials. And soon, a member of the district attorney's office arrives at the crime scene. An investigator named Larry Martin.
So what do we got?
I got a call from one of my coworkers who advised me that this had happened. Well, Mark was a friend of mine, and I knew right then that I wanted to be on this case.
Detective David Spencer shows Martin around.
Mark was making a traffic stop. He gets out of his car. The odd thing is the angle of the shooter.
It was obvious that it wasn't a typical traffic stop. Mark's car was parked in an odd angle, which put Mark at an immediate disadvantage.
The shooter comes up with the gun. Mark sees it, goes for cover, gets shot in the back.
He was like a sitting duck.
Yeah. So the bullet that killed him did that. There's traces of blood along the edges.
The bullet had traveled from his back through his chest and actually had gone through that street sign. The crime scene investigators found a bullet casing from a .44 Magnum. So you know then that you're dealing with a very high-powered rifle.
I'm gonna let Kenda know. Martin to Kenda.
You there?
Yeah, what you got, Larry?
Because of the fact that dabbling worked for me, I stayed abreast of the facts of the case. As referred to me by Larry Martin, he would tell me what was going on.
I thought you'd be interested to know that...
Turns out the murder weapon was a .44 Magnum.
The .44 Magnum carbine is a very unusual weapon. It is incredibly powerful.
I doubt this guy just happened to be carrying that kind of firepower around.
He must have already been up to no good when Mark pulled him over. I think you're right. But what?
To help answer that question, detectives begin interviewing patrons from the restaurant adjacent to the crime scene. One man in particular has a lot of information.
Brett Carlson was the manager that night, and during the course of business, he did notice that a police officer was pulling somebody over out in front of his store.
Well, I saw the flashing lights, looked over for a sec. I figured no big deal, some guy in a Camaro was getting a ticket. So I went back to what I was doing.
But then all of a sudden, he hears 3 gunshots ring out.
Get down! Everyone, get down!
He sees a suspect leading out the passenger side window of this Camaro with some type of a long gun. He then saw the suspect get back into the driver's seat of that Camaro and speed away.
It is obvious from my own experience, the suspect clearly understood that Dabbling was about to discover who he was.
Who is this guy? Is there something in that car he didn't want Mark to see?
This is a guy that needs to escape and will kill if necessary to get it done.
Did you get a good look at who was in the car?
Well, just one guy, white guy. Had brown hair, maybe in his 20s.
Pretty nondescript. You know, he couldn't tell any weight or height because he was still inside the car.
However, Brett Carlson is able to provide a detailed description of the shooter's vehicle, a red Camaro with California tags. Surprisingly, Carlson is also able to recall the vehicle's license plate number.
The police dispatchers immediately aired the description of the stopped vehicle with a license plate number.
This was definitely an all-out manhunt.
Every officer in the city drops what he's doing and starts looking for that car. We're going to put this guy to ground, and nothing else matters. This guy has kicked over a hornet's nest. We've been working very hard as an agency to deal with this terrible event of the death of an officer.
Mark Dabbling was a wonderful guy, always had a smile on his face.
Mark was special. He understood what it means to help people. Mark understood community policing before community policing was in vogue.
While police scour the city in search of the vehicle, Sergeant Joe Kenda is at the hospital. handling an emotionally grueling aspect of the case.
Mark Dabbling was not married, but he did have a girlfriend, and he had a mother. They responded to the hospital. I was there to meet them.
Mrs. Dabbling?
Yes.
I'm Joe Kenda, Mark's supervising officer. I'm very sorry, but Mark didn't make it.
And they broke down into an emotional mess.
I'll go get the chaplain for you.
I took an oath to do what I said I would do. I'm not going to back away from that. But I was suffering that night. I still do.
Meanwhile, the search for the shooter continues.
The entire police department is in pursuit of this car. Within minutes, they discover the car parked in a driveway of a private home in the area of the shooting. Now, we're going to make contact in this house.
You're just not going to go up and knock on the door and say, hey, can we talk? You're looking for a cop killer.
They didn't take any chances.
Police, open up! Can I help you?
So you know right away, well, this isn't the guy we're looking for.
Yes, sir. Is that your vehicle over there?
No, I've never seen it before.
Okay. Would you mind if we come in and look around?
Sure.
They went in and they searched that house. Well, he wasn't there.
Clear.
The homeowner turns out to be very cooperative. He's home alone with his wife. He's watching television. Somebody dumps a car in his driveway and walks away from it. He has no idea who did that.
And with only Brett Carlson's vague description of the shooter to go on, neither do the cops.
Well, right away, what you want to do is get the crime scene investigators over there to completely investigate this car.
The vehicle identification number should tell investigators who actually owns the car, and a latent fingerprint might tell them who's been driving it.
Technicians did find a very good identifiable fingerprint on the rearview mirror. We sent it to the lab.
Let's find out if it matches, but at the end of the day, that's going to take hours, days, who knows. We need something right now.
They opened the trunk and they realized that it had many license plates from many states.
You got a pretty good idea of what's going on now. You got somebody that's traveling through numerous states and continuing to steal license plates to cover up the fact that he's in a stolen car.
What's this?
Quite the trail of breadcrumbs.
They find a motel receipt from the state of Nebraska in this car. Going to a motel, you need to show ID.
So we called the authorities in Nebraska.
Hi, can I help you?
Yes, ma'am.
They go to that motel and do whatever they had to do to get the records on who this guy was. And they do it right now.
Let's see here. Here we go. He was under the name Joe Harbor.
Joe Harbor.
I tell you what, when I got here this afternoon, he was left without even paying his bill.
That figures. Could you show me the room? Nobody's been in here, have they?
No, maids come in the morning.
Okay.
They reported to us that unusual things were found in there. Lots of road maps. And there was also several magazines.
Wow, all empty.
So now we're looking for Joe Harbor. Who is Joe Harbor?
Back in Colorado Springs, investigators run the name through a national database. There are plenty of Joseph Harbors out there, but none with the type of criminal record normally associated with a cop killer.
You know you have a guy that's stealing license plates to cover up the identity of a stolen car. Is Joe Harbor really his name? Probably not.
He's running from something. We don't know what, but he's running. We still don't know who he is.
Hey, this is Spencer with Colorado Springs. Can you run a VIN for me?
This Camaro is in NCIC, National Crime Information Center, as a stolen car. It was stolen 30 days ago in yet another state.
Down! Get out! Get out! Get the down! Get out! Get out! Where are they? What? The keys to the Camaro!
They're over there!
All right.
Keith Clark was the owner of this Camaro. He lived in Indianapolis.
He was robbed at gunpoint by two individuals, both white males, who tied him up, stole the car, and had a discussion about killing him.
Let's just do him right now. He's already seen us.
They're already gonna know it's us.
They debated whether or not to kill him before they stole his car. The part I can't figure out is why they didn't.
You guys don't have...
We don't need to make this messier than it is. Let's go.
Day's your lucky day, big boy.
He lucked out.
When Larry Martin briefs Kenda about this new intel,
Go for Kenda.
he is intrigued to learn there was not one, but two individuals involved in the home invasion.
Are you sure there was only one guy in the Camaro when Mark got shot?
Yep, every witness said one guy.
Huh. So up until about a month ago, this guy had a partner in crime.
Are we looking for two people now, not just one?
Who are these people? Who are these people?
But they're not local boys, I can tell you that.
I'm afraid if we don't find them soon, they'll just disappear.
I know.
But the Colorado Springs PD hasn't played their last card. CSI has a match for the fingerprint found in the killer's stolen Camaro. And it's not Joe Harbor.
They've identified him. He's Vernon Wayne Templeman. He's 24 years old, and he has an enormous police record. We are in pursuit of him. And it will not stop until we find him. There's something profoundly wrong about a policeman being killed in the line of duty. There just is. When you put that uniform on, you walk out the door, you may never walk through it again. That's the nature of the work. When Dabbling is shot on December 6, 1982, that all wells up in you. It's overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming.
Colorado Springs police are determined to catch the killer, and a fingerprint collected from the shooter's abandoned Camaro may bring them one step closer to that goal.
We run Vernon Wayne Templeman. Who is this guy? Does he have a record?
No!
He is basically a one-man crime wave. He's an escapee from a jail in Florida.
Contact was made with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department in Florida, and they advised that Vernon Wayne Templeman and a person by the name of Larry Bailey both escaped from the Pinellas County Jail just a month before Officer Mark Dabbling was murdered.
They obtained hacksaw blades from the Confederates. They saw through 20-some bars in this jail.
They were able to leave their jail cell, get up on the roof of the jail, climb down the side of the jail, stole a car, and were on the run. Looking at that route that they would have taken to go all the way from Florida and end up in Colorado, and you're finding lots and lots of robberies of motels, liquor stores, and even a couple of banks.
Check your hardware, man.
Did these two people do this?
So how do you want to do it?
More than likely.
As investigators try to retrace the path Templeman and Bailey might have taken on their crime spree, they catch a much-needed break.
Oh, really? Well, thank you. Lawrence Bailey's been shot. He's in custody.
Where?
Sacramento, California.
Nice.
He's paralyzed from the waist down, and he wants to talk to someone about Templeman, which would make me wonder maybe he has a grudge.
They ain't no honor among thieves. No, it's not a nice group of people.
So myself and Detective David Spencer hopped on a plane and went to California.
We found him in the medical prison facility, and he was in real rough shape.
We hear that you're friends with Templeman.
No, I wouldn't really call Vernon a friend. Because after I got shot, he left me to die. I mean, look at me. So if you have any questions about him, I'll try and help you out as much as possible.
Bailey tells Martin that he escaped with Templeman, as we already knew.
After we got out of jail, you know, we stole a car, and we needed money, right?
They conducted a series of robberies across the United States, liquor stores, motels, at gunpoint.
They stole license plates from Georgia all the way to California and back.
Vernon started to get paranoid. Said that the car in Florida that we took, police were on the lookout for it, so we needed to ditch it.
Ended up in Indianapolis and saw this really nice Camaro parked there. And Templeman decided then that that's the car I want.
Go.
Continued on a crime spree, robbing liquor stores and motels.
And in Sacramento, they decided to pull another armed robbery.
Good. Templeman's going to be the driver.
Yep.
Bailey's going to go in and rob this mom and pop hotel.
Go.
Larry, in one end, he had a 22 with him. He confronted the clerk.
Give me your money. Give me up. I'm not joking.
Unbeknownst to them, there's a surveillance camera.
You think I'm f***ing around with you? Hurry.
The owner is watching them.
Hurry. You money. Oh, hold on.
Call 911.
Burn! Burn!
He was hoping that Templeman would come in to help him, but that didn't happen.
And so Larry was A, going back to prison, B, he was never going to walk again, and C, he was furious.
We're looking for your boy, Templeman. We believe that he killed a Colorado Springs police officer.
You know where we can find him?
No. But I'll tell you what, if you do find him, I'll testify against him. He said that he would kill a cop before he went back to jail. Hell, we even practiced what we would do if we were pulled over by a cop.
We used to practice how to kill a policeman. How nice.
Templeman told him that, you know, when a cop stops you, he has no idea who he's got. He's just stopping a car. That's the time to get the drop on him.
What you're saying is that if he gets behind you...
They had discussed that they would park in such a way that put the law enforcement officer at a disadvantage.
He doesn't have any cover. He doesn't have a shot on you, and boom, he's in the dirt.
Prison is gladiator school. You learn how to sharpen your skills as a bad guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Lawrence Bailey's statement is further confirmation Vernon Templeman is the man who shot Officer Dabbling. But back in Colorado Springs, the case is about to take another dramatic turn.
What?
911 gets a call from a frantic woman who is confronted at gunpoint.
They stole my car keys. They stole my car.
She had answered a knock on her door, and when she opened it, a young white male rushed in, slapped her around, tied her up, and stole her car.
No, send help. Right away. Please.
The police put two and two together in 5 seconds. That's Templeman.
Though Vernon Templeman has successfully stolen another vehicle, This time, Kenda's men already know the make, model, and plates. They also know the driver is more than willing to kill another cop.
We immediately put the description of that vehicle out on the police radio, not only in Colorado Springs, but throughout El Paso County.
Every officer wants to be the one that finds it. Everybody wants to be the one that faces him down. Pull your .44 Magnum carbine on me, you bull, and let's see what happens. Information is coming to our hands from a woman that puts this shooter in a new vehicle where we know what it is. And we are in hot pursuit of that car.
In a situation like this, it was going to be everybody at the same task, not only here, but in every neighboring state.
There was a police officer down in Fountain, Colorado, just about 12 miles south of Colorado Springs, who wanted to be involved.
All cars be on the lookout for a metallic blue Pontiac Granville.
When this went out over the police frequency, Officer Danny Weaver went to Interstate 25 and parked and waited on the chance that maybe the suspect would be heading south in that direction.
He immediately got behind that car, verified that the license plate matched.
John 7, I'm behind the 62 suspect.
He called it in. I need backup. I'm behind that stolen car that's wanted in connection with the police officer murder in Colorado Springs, and I need some help.
Officer Weaver knew who he was stopping. He took all the precautions he possibly could.
He doesn't put any lights on that car till other cars arrive.
Within a matter of minutes, a slew of other officers have joined Officer Weaver in his pursuit of Vernon Templeman.
All right, I'm going to initiate.
So you got that adrenaline running through your system as this is coming to a head.
This is a felony stop to end all felony stops.
This is it. Is he going to jump out of that car and start shooting?
Every police officer in that moment isn't frightened. He's enraged. Give me an excuse to light you up. Give me an excuse.
Driver, put your hands out the window.
Mr. Badass does as he's told.
Step out of the car and keep your handling sealed.
Mr. I'm not going to be taken alive till he's faced with the choice. That's a little different.
He gave up like the coward he was, laid down on the ground like he was told, and was taken into custody.
Attention all cars. The suspect in Officer Davlin's shooting has been apprehended without incident.
I felt relief. I felt a rush come over me of satisfaction that he's not going to shoot anybody else. He's done. We didn't gun him down in a fit of rage, which we could have done. Because if we kill someone because we're mad, because we hate him, because he's killed one of us, then we are like him, and we are not like him.
Back at headquarters, police gather to see what Vernon Templeman has to say for himself.
Put your feet flat on the floor. Sit up.
I know the game, and I know how it's played. They will attempt to talk to him. I knew he wouldn't say a word. He'd want a lawyer. He's an experienced bad guy.
We already know a lot that's happened, but I want your side of the story.
I'll tell my side of the story. I'm telling it to my lawyer.
That is your right. But there is one thing we're gonna have to get straightened out.
Okay, we're not going to interrogate you anymore, but we do have a right to know who you really are.
See, I can send public defenders to your cell. I gotta give them a name. We don't know what that is.
Joseph Harbor.
We know it's not Joe Harbor.
We knew who he was, and we had him by the throat. Vernon is toast, whether he thinks so or not. Mr. Templeman gives a fake name upon being arrested. He can tell a story. He can even invent one, and it won't make any difference. There is a volume of evidence that says he's the killer.
What's more, investigators know the man before them is already a fugitive from justice.
We know that's a fake name.
Templeman, you're done.
He asked me, are you going to take my fingerprints? And I said, well, of course we're going to take your fingerprints.
We pretty much told him, we know that you're wanted. We know everything about you. Don't kid us anymore. So he gave it up that he was really Vernon Wayne Templeman.
Let me be honest with you, okay? Cooperation is the only thing that's gonna help you.
Listen, you have a right to talk to an attorney, but we want to hear your side of the story.
I'm not saying jack, so why don't you be a good little piggy? Go fetch my lawyer.
Templeman, you're gonna fry.
As Vernon Templeman waits for a court-appointed attorney to arrive, Kenda and his fellow investigators try to piece together the events that led to Officer Dabling's death.
Mark Dabling was conducting routine patrol.
83, 1025.
Well, he sees this Camaro come up and make a left-hand turn. You can't do that here. So he calls it in. He's making a traffic stop.
I got a red Camaro, California plates.
As police officers, we know there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop. And Mark's case is a prime example of that.
You stop a car. You have no idea who's in that car. But that person in that car certainly knows who you are. You are the police. The suspect clearly understood that Dabling was about to discover who he was. He's an escapee from a prison. He's not about to be taken.
Before he even made contact with Templeman, Templeman was executing the plan that he had talked about with Larry Bailey.
Templeman had parked his car cockeyed, which put Mark at an immediate disadvantage because he had to go around behind his vehicle to approach the passenger side of the suspect vehicle.
He got out of his car. He advanced toward the car he had stopped.
But at the same time, Templeman slid from the driver's side over to the passenger side and was leaning out the window with that .44 Magnum. He needed to dive for cover. He turned and was running down the side of his car to get to cover when Templeman started shooting.
He basically didn't have a chance.
He shot Dabling once in the back. It struck a vital organ in Mark Dabling.
Vernon Templeman is charged with first-degree murder and held without bond until trial.
Larry and I, at that point, had a big, huge job in front of us. I think it was later, when it was all over, is when we allowed ourselves to grieve.
On a cold December morning, over 500 police officers gather for the funeral of Mark Dabling.
Any police funeral's hard. This was incredibly hard because I knew Mark, respected Mark. He was a great cop, good guy.
Mark gave his life for this community, and I know that he made a conscious decision that he would lay down his life before he would risk the lives of innocent bystanders.
I was very proud of the way the Colorado Springs Police Department took care of Mark's family.
The department's highest honor, the Police Cross, was awarded posthumously to Dabling's parents. It's only the second such honor for an officer killed on duty.
Police officers' funerals are a big event because it's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. At the end of the day, police officers believe they have each other. And in many ways, that's true.
Since Mark's death, we remember December 6th every year. You think about it. We never forgot.
Policemen don't forget. Ever.
Vernon Templeman is found guilty of first-degree murder and is sentenced to life in prison. Although justice has been served, the community is still deeply affected by the loss of Mark Dabling. A street is dedicated in his honor.
The city responded like they'd lost their firstborn son. The amount of support we got was just incredible.
I want Mark to be remembered as one heck of a police officer. A great guy, a great friend.
Mark's mom said, you know, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what might have been. I spend some time thinking that he is probably in a wonderful place. That makes me happy.
In my time on the PD, I buried 7 friends of mine who went down in the line. Did people remember? Some do. Some never forget. They're on the wall. They chose to be on that wall. I was there with them. I'd go back tomorrow. But it's young man's came, and I'm no longer young.
It started with a knock. Just one, sharp and deliberate, echoing through the quiet streets of Denton, Texas, where the summer of 2005 had wrapped the town in a suffocating heat, sticky and relentless. The kind of heat that made the air heavy and thick, the kind that made secrets simmer just beneath the surface. That morning, neighbors would later recall, there was nothing unusual. Children played in sprinklers, dogs barked lazily in fenced yards, and the hum of distant traffic carried over the neighborhood like a steady heartbeat. But the house on Willow Lane, the rhythm of ordinary life would shatter. Emily Hartman, 23, slender, with dark hair falling in a careless cascade across her shoulders, had not been seen for nearly 24 hours. Her roommate, an anxious young woman named Carla, had tried calling her cell repeatedly. The phone rang endlessly, untouched, the voicemail box already full, as if Emily had vanished into thin air. A missing person report was filed late in the afternoon, but for the local police, Emily's absence did not initially trigger alarms. People left for work, went on vacations, moved without notice. Yet something about the empty apartment, the untouched coffee on the counter, and the half-read book lying open on her bed, whispered that this was different. Detectives assigned to the case were seasoned, worn by years of similar calls. Lost teenagers, runaway spouses, temporary disappearances, but something in their gut warned that Emily Hartman's case would not resolve itself in the usual way. The first visit to the apartment was methodical, almost clinical. They noted small details: a streak of dust across the living room floor, footprints on the balcony that seemed hastily made, the faint smell of perfume, cloying and almost sickly, lingering in the air. A neighbor mentioned seeing a strange car parked outside the building the night before, dark, tinted windows, engine idling. The description was vague, but it ignited a spark of concern. Who could have come and gone so quietly, leaving no trace but a faint echo of danger? The first 48 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Police checked every conceivable lead: friends, co-workers, social circles, past relationships. Emily's life seemed ordinary, unremarkable, yet that ordinariness began to feel like a mask, hiding something deeper, something that might explain why she had disappeared. In interviews, friends spoke of her kindness, her laughter, the small ambitions that made her life a quiet testament to normalcy. But beneath the smiles and their recollections, there were pauses, glances exchanged, and fleeting expressions of doubt. One co-worker, a barista from the coffee shop where Emily worked part-time, recalled a man who had lingered too long, watched her intently, his gaze heavy, calculating. The description was fleeting, tall, lean, hair dark, maybe late 30s. Yet the memory stuck like a splinter in the mind of Detective Lawson, who felt the weight of the missing woman's absence pressing down. By the third day, the case took on a different hue. CCTV footage from a convenience store near the apartment complex revealed a figure, hooded and nondescript, moving past the aisles with purpose. The footage was grainy, a blur of motion, but it hinted at a presence, someone observing, someone following. That night, the local community felt a shift. Lights burned later, doors were double-locked, and whispers filled the air. "Did you see Emily today? Do you think she'll be back?" Suspicion spread like wildfire, a contagion of fear that settled over Denton's quiet streets like a dark cloud. Days turned into weeks, and the initial flurry of police activity began to fade, replaced by routine checks and periodic interviews. Emily's disappearance became a ghost haunting the precinct, a cold case in waiting. Yet the detectives refused to let go. Small clues emerged in the margins. A receipt for a diner she rarely visited, a text message to an unknown number, a torn photograph of Emily with someone whose face had been scratched out. Every fragment was a piece of a puzzle that refused to assemble. Every lead a whisper of a story yet untold. It was during a routine search of her apartment that Detective Lawson noticed the first truly unsettling detail. In Emily's closet behind a row of jackets, a faint outline of a door, almost imperceptible, marred the wall. Investigating further, they discovered a small hidden compartment, barely large enough to hold a single box. Inside were photographs, not of Emily, but of strangers caught in everyday moments, walking their dogs, leaving work, picking up groceries. Each photo was marked with dates and times, as if someone had cataloged their lives with meticulous care. And then, at the very bottom of the box, Emily's own face stared back from a recent snapshot, eyes wide, frozen in shock, as if she had glimpsed something she shouldn't have. The discovery sent a ripple through the investigation. This was no longer a simple missing person case. The pieces pointed toward obsession, a carefully calculated intrusion into a life once thought safe. Detectives traced the photographs to a small camera found abandoned near the local park, wiped clean of fingerprints but still containing the digital traces of movement patterns. A pattern emerged. Emily had been watched, monitored, pursued with precision, yet no one had seen the signs. The realization was chilling. The predator had blended seamlessly into the fabric of the town, invisible yet omnipresent. Neighbors were interviewed again, this time with fresh urgency. One elderly woman mentioned a man she saw lingering near the apartment complex for several nights in a row. Another recalled hearing muffled voices and footsteps late at night, dismissing them initially as teenagers fooling around. Every testimony added a layer of unease. Denton, a town that prided itself on neighborly trust, began to fracture. Fear spread quietly, like ink in water, staining the sense of safety that once held the community together. Detectives expanded their search beyond the immediate neighborhood, reaching into the surrounding counties, pulling records, examining patterns of crime, and seeking anyone who might match the obscure profile forming in their minds. Emily Hartman had vanished, but her presence lingered in every corner. The diner she frequented, the park she jogged through, the streets she walked at dusk. Each location held potential clues, yet each yielded frustration, dead ends, and mounting anxiety. The question became not just who had taken her, but why, and why had they been so careful, so meticulous that for weeks, for months, no trace emerged. Months passed, and the investigation grew cold. The photographs, the CCTV footage, the mysterious car, all faded into a hazy memory within the department. Yet Detective Lawson and a small team refused to close the file. Something about Emily's disappearance gnawed at them, a shadow that would not lift. Every new case of stalking or intrusion reminded them of her. Every missed clue in other investigations became a reminder of what had been overlooked. The town tried to move on, but Denton had been scarred. Conversations at grocery stores, murmurs at school gates, even the silent glance of strangers passing each other carried the unspoken question, where was Emily Hartman, and would she ever be found? Evidence was re-examined, a painstaking process that brought back moments thought long gone. Digital footprints were retraced, car rentals cross-checked, phone logs analyzed with new software. Slowly, patterns emerged, revealing a disturbing truth. Emily's abductor had studied her meticulously, a presence unseen yet omnipotent in its precision. The town that once slept easily now woke in uneasy stretches, wondering if the invisible eyes were still watching. The investigation entered a liminal space between despair and revelation. For years, Emily's name echoed in the hallways of the police station, on the lips of detectives who refused to let the case die, and in the whispers of a community that could not forget. The apartment on Willow Lane, though empty, remained a focal point of mystery. The hidden compartment, the photographs, the anomalies in her daily patterns, all became symbols of a larger, darker story, one that stretched far beyond a single disappearance. And through it all, one question lingered, unrelenting, haunting. How could someone vanish so completely, leaving only shadows, only fragments, and a sense of dread that refused to dissipate? As the summer heat waned and September crept in, Denton's streets carried the remnants of unease, the faint hum of a town that could not forget. Detective Lawson pored over every scrap of evidence once more, eyes bloodshot from long nights staring at photographs, files, and digital maps. The hidden compartment in Emily's apartment had been thoroughly documented, yet every glance at the photographs inside sent a shiver through the spine. There was a method to the madness. Angles chosen carefully, times marked precisely, subjects unaware of their observation. Emily's image, staring back from that box, became a haunting centerpiece, the anchor around which the entire case orbited. Detectives revisited the neighbor reports, the vague description of a dark car parked outside, the fleeting glimpses of a hooded figure. Each fragment, when re-examined with a methodical eye, began to coalesce. Patterns emerged, not immediately obvious, but present in the spaces between mundane life. The man in the hood was always near her apartment, the car always positioned just out of the way of streetlights. It was meticulous, almost ritualistic, and it chilled those who studied it. They began to map his movements, plotting sightings against Emily's daily routines, discovering that he had almost predicted her every step, a shadow that mirrored her life without ever touching it, until the day she vanished entirely. An anonymous tip arrived one evening, left on the station voicemail, a distorted voice, low and shaky, mentioning a cabin on the outskirts of Wise County. The caller provided vague coordinates and a warning. You're too late or maybe just in time. Lawson and his team drove into the night, headlights cutting swaths through the thick, darkened trees. The cabin was small, abandoned, rotting wood sagging under years of neglect. Inside, nothing immediately apparent, just dust, broken furniture, and a lingering scent of decay. But in the corner, under a pile of tattered newspapers, they found a notebook, worn at the edges, pages yellowed with time. The handwriting was small, precise, almost obsessive, detailing movements of a young woman named Emily Hartman. The dates matched photographs in her apartment, the entries describing where she walked, whom she spoke to, even the way she smiled when no one was watching. The discovery escalated the urgency. This was no longer a case of chance disappearance. It was deliberate, a chilling orchestration of observation, calculation, and control. Lawson called in a forensic psychologist to analyze the notebook. The expert's face was pale as he leafed through the pages, muttering terms like predatory behavior, stalking, and planned abduction. Each page revealed an intimate knowledge of Emily's life, including details only someone close, or dangerously fixated, could know. There was a methodical cruelty in the way her life had been charted, a quiet terror that went unnoticed by those around her. Simultaneously, other leads emerged from unexpected sources. Emily's workplace, a small coffee shop frequented by locals, provided an overlooked clue. A barista remembered a man asking questions about Emily weeks before she disappeared, attempting to gauge her schedule, her routines, even the people she interacted with. Security cameras had captured him once, loitering across the street, hands tucked into the pockets of a dark jacket, face obscured. At the time, it seemed inconsequential. Now, it was an ominous breadcrumb leading down a trail of obsession that stretched across Denton and beyond. Law enforcement began to reconstruct Emily's final known movements. The timeline was precise, down to the minute. Leaving her apartment that Thursday evening, stopping briefly at a corner store, walking past a deserted park, a figure shadowing her from a distance. Witnesses recalled hearing a muffled argument near the alley behind her apartment complex, voices indistinct, carried away by the wind. Police theorized that Emily had confronted her stalker, or perhaps had been lured by him, an unsettling thought that tightened the knot of tension in the investigation. Days blurred into weeks. The press picked up the story, and Denton's community became increasingly anxious. Flyers lined telephone poles, emails circulated with updates, and nightly news segments replayed photographs of Emily with haunting repetition. Social media, in its early forms, carried speculation, fear, and accusations that only deepened the sense of collective dread. Yet, despite widespread awareness, leads remained frustratingly scarce. No fingerprints, no physical evidence, no clear suspects. It was as if Emily had been erased from existence, leaving only a shadow, a cold case that lingered like a ghost over the town. Detectives began to delve into Emily's past, seeking connections that might illuminate motive. Friends, acquaintances, even casual interactions from years prior were scrutinized. One lead pointed to an ex-boyfriend who had moved out of state, a man with a history of volatile behavior. Another suggested a former coworker obsessed with Emily's social media, watching her photos, tracking her movements online. Every potential suspect seemed to either vanish in a thin air or offer an alibi solid enough to frustrate further pursuit. The sense of urgency heightened, the room of detectives filled with maps, timelines, photographs, and the unspoken tension of exhaustion mixed with fear. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, in the form of a small detail previously dismissed. The photograph of Emily found in her own hidden compartment had been developed differently than the rest. The film rolled distinct, traced back to a local photo lab that had long been out of business. Investigators unearthed the old negatives hidden beneath decades of dust in the backroom. Upon closer inspection, the images revealed a subtle but crucial anomaly. The same hooded figure appeared repeatedly in the background, always partially obscured, always at a distance. The figure's posture, gestures, even a shadow cast on the pavement suggested familiarity, confidence, a comfort with remaining unseen. Whoever he was, he had studied Emily extensively and was capable of moving unnoticed through spaces others considered safe. The revelation reinvigorated the investigation. Detectives cross-referenced old addresses, vehicle registrations, and employment records. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The dark car mentioned by neighbors, the hooded figure in photographs, the anonymous tip pointing to the cabin, all converged in a way that suggested a meticulous orchestration, a predator who had considered every contingency. Yet the person remained elusive, always a step ahead, always a ghost. Each new discovery brought relief tempered by frustration, closer, yet still just beyond reach. Meanwhile, the community's anxiety escalated. Parents cautioned children, late-night walks became solitary, and neighbors watched one another with suspicion. Denton, once a town defined by neighborly trust, had transformed into a place of silent vigilance. Every unaccounted sound, a door creak, a car engine, a late-night footstep, triggered whispers of fear. Could he still be out there, waiting, watching, orchestrating? Emily's absence had become a lens through which the entire town viewed their world, revealing vulnerabilities, cracks, and shadows that were once ignored. Then came a man who changed everything. A former co-worker who had quietly returned to Denton after years away. He volunteered information, claiming he had noticed the same dark car repeatedly parked near the apartment complex. His recollections were precise, his observations unervingly accurate. He mentioned seeing the hooded figure at odd intervals, leaving before anyone could notice, always following, always studying. For the first time, detectives felt the icy touch of realization. The man they had been seeking had been visible all along, blending seamlessly into the town's everyday life. Law enforcement escalated, preparing a sting, mapping surveillance, and coordinating with federal agencies. Every movement was calculated, every potential encounter meticulously planned. The tension in the precinct was palpable. Lawson could feel the weight of years pressing down, each day a battle against time and uncertainty. The feeling of being perpetually one step behind gnawed at the team. Yet there was an unspoken determination. Emily would not remain a ghost, a lingering question mark haunting the community forever. By the time October arrived, investigators were exhausted, yet invigorated by the convergence of leads. Evidence, long dormant, had begun to form a cohesive picture. The pattern of observation, the meticulous stalking, the repeated sightings, and the hidden photographs painted the profile of a predator operating with near-perfect precision. And yet, the final piece, the moment of confrontation, the truth behind Emily's disappearance, remained tantalizingly out of reach. The case had stretched into a tapestry of obsession, fear, and relentless pursuit. Emily's life, catalogued obsessively by a man whose motives remained inscrutable, became the focal point of a narrative that Denton could neither ignore nor forget. Each new day brought the weight of possibility, the chance to find her alive, or the grim understanding that she might have been forever lost. And through it all, the unseen predator remained a shadow, a chilling reminder that the world is never as safe as it appears, that even in the heart of a familiar town, darkness can linger just beyond sight, patient, calculating, unstoppable. October deepened, and Denton's nights carried a chill that seemed to seep into the bones of the town, a subtle reminder that summer's oppressive heat had given way to something colder, darker, more relentless. Detective Lawson sat in the precinct long after the other officers had left, the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead punctuated by the occasional click of a keyboard, the rustle of papers, the faint whisper of wind against the building. The photographs, the cabin notebook, the CCTV frames, each element of Emily Hartman's vanished existence, had begun to coalesce into a narrative, yet the story remained incomplete, fractured, maddeningly elusive. The dark figure that haunted the images, the shadows behind her apartment, the meticulously recorded movements, they were all pieces of a puzzle whose final picture had not yet emerged. It was a subtle clue, almost insignificant, that reignited the investigation. A janitor, hired temporarily at a neighboring office building months earlier, mentioned a man who had consistently parked his dark vehicle in a lot directly across from Emily's apartment. He described the man as always wearing the same dark jacket, the hood drawn low, sometimes carrying a camera, sometimes simply standing still, watching, always watching. At first, detectives filed this as anecdotal, peripheral, the kind of recollection that rarely leads anywhere. But combined with the anonymous tip, the cabin notebook, and the recurring sightings captured in photographs, it became impossible to ignore. A pattern was emerging, precise, deliberate, and terrifying in its clarity. Lawson organized a thorough re-examination of the neighborhood streetlights, surveillance cameras, and traffic patterns. Forensic analysts cross-referenced timestamps from Emily's last known movements with the positions of the dark car. Every detail, no matter how small, was measured and mapped. The result revealed something chilling. The hooded figure had shadowed Emily consistently, always staying just out of reach, orchestrating encounters and absences with the meticulous precision of a predator whose patience was infinite. Denton, once considered safe, had been a stage for a relentless watcher, and the quiet streets had borne silent witness to the unfolding of a crime almost invisible. A breakthrough came through an unexpected avenue. Emily's social circle, friends who had long since been interviewed, suddenly remembered something, an offhand comment she had made about a coworker at the coffee shop who always seemed to appear where she did. Initially dismissed as idle chatter, the detail now gained significance. Detectives traced this coworker, a man named Gregory Miles, whose movements, at first glance, were unremarkable. He had left Denton for a series of short-term jobs in neighboring towns, but records indicated a consistent presence near Emily's apartment during crucial windows in the weeks before her disappearance. Bank statements, utility records, and minor traffic citations revealed a pattern of proximity, as if he had orchestrated his life around her routines, almost as if time itself had bent to his obsessions. The investigation intensified. Surveillance of locations he frequented revealed small but telling behaviors. Frequent glances toward cameras, changes in appearance, avoidance of familiar faces, and erratic schedules. Yet Miles remained elusive, always a step ahead, a ghost moving through plain sight. It was becoming painfully clear that Emily's disappearance was not the result of chance, but of a man who had studied her for months, perhaps years, understanding the rhythm of her life, the patterns that made her vulnerable, and the moments when she would be most exposed. Meanwhile, forensic breakthroughs provided additional context. Trace evidence from Emily's apartment, previously overlooked, was reanalyzed using newly available technology. Microscopic fibers, barely detectable, were matched to clothing found in Miles's discarded items at a storage locker. DNA, minute but conclusive, linked the dark vehicle to items recovered near the cabin. Each connection, small on its own, combined into an irrefutable trajectory. The investigation was no longer speculative. It was grounded in concrete, undeniable links that traced the path of Emily's final hours. The community, meanwhile, lived in a state of suspended fear. Every passerby, every stranger at the grocery store, every unfamiliar vehicle at night became a potential threat. Local news amplified the tension, reporting renewed police activity, encouraging anyone with information to come forward. Denton's collective anxiety was palpable, a tangible presence that seemed to linger in the air, a constant reminder that a predator had walked among them for months without detection. Parents kept children close, doors were double-locked, and streets that once bustled with casual activity became corridors of caution and suspicion. Detectives pieced together Emily's last known interactions. A late-night text from her roommate, a brief phone call to a friend, a transaction at a convenience store. Each moment was reconstructed to the minute. Using digital analysis and witness testimonies, they created a detailed timeline that suggested Emily may have realized she was being followed. Evidence of her attempts to vary her routines, to appear unpredictable, were noted. She had altered her jogging route, switched grocery stores, and even changed her usual coffee order. Yet despite these efforts, Miles had adapted, always anticipating her next move, always present yet invisible, orchestrating his own version of control from the shadows. Then came the chilling detail that broke the case open. An overlooked security camera at a local gas station captured a fleeting image of Emily entering a nondescript vehicle, the hooded figure waiting in the driver's seat. The angle was poor, the light dim, but the sequence of movements matched previously collected data. It confirmed the presence of a second location, an isolated area miles from Denton, where Emily may have been taken temporarily. Investigators mobilized quickly, coordinating with nearby law enforcement to track properties, abandoned lots, and remote cabins that could serve as concealment. The urgency was palpable. Time was no longer abstract. Lawson revisited the cabin in Wise County. Months had passed, but the location still held secrets. Carefully combing through debris, they discovered traces of recent activity, footprints in the dirt, disturbed foliage, and, most importantly, a small, hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside, more photographs of Emily, her expressions shifting from casual ease to subtle unease, indicated that she had begun to notice the watchful presence before her disappearance. Some images were time-stamped within hours of her vanishing, a haunting glimpse of the predator's obsession escalating. As the investigation progressed, the team began to understand the psychological dimension of the crime. Miles exhibited classic stalking behaviors, meticulous observation, collection of personal items, and an escalating pattern of engagement designed to exert control over Emily's life. Each photograph, each note, each observation was an element of psychological manipulation, a form of terror that had left Emily isolated, fearful, and ultimately vulnerable. Forensic psychologists described it as a chilling testament to obsession, one that blurred the line between predation and compulsion, revealing the darkest corners of human fixation. Pressure mounted within the department. Investigators worked around the clock, piecing together fragmented evidence while contending with public scrutiny. Every detail mattered. Vehicle registrations, social media posts, minor traffic stops, patterns of daily life, all contributed to the creation of a profile that could predict Miles's movements, anticipate his behavior, and ultimately bring him into the light. Yet despite the mounting evidence, a sense of frustration persisted. Miles remained invisible, a phantom inhabiting Denton's streets, observing, calculating, unafraid, almost taunting those who sought to capture him. In the quiet hours of a late October night, Lawson sat alone with the case files spread across the precinct table, the overhead lights casting stark shadows on photographs and maps. The case had evolved into a psychological chess match, each move countered by an unseen opponent who had studied the town, Emily's life, and the detective's own methods. But a breakthrough loomed, fragile and tentative, resting on the meticulous cross-referencing of data that had previously seemed unrelated. One connection, seemingly innocuous, a library card, a forgotten receipt, a traffic violation, would become the linchpin, the critical link that allowed investigators to finally see the predator not as an abstract shadow, but as a tangible, apprehensible figure. The tension was nearly unbearable. Denton held its collective breath, its streets quiet with cautious anticipation. Every citizen became a participant in the unfolding drama. Every corner, alley, and park bench potential stage for revelation or disaster. Emily Hartman's absence, once a mystery contained to a file and a few photographs, now permeated the entire town, a palpable, invisible presence demanding answers. And through it all, the darkness persisted, patient, knowing, a constant reminder that even the smallest detail, a discarded coffee cup, a fleeting glance, a subtle shadow, could reveal the truth or allow it to slip away forever. November crept into Denton with a deceptive calm, as though the town itself were holding its breath, aware that something unseen, patient, and calculated lay beneath the surface. Detective Lawson and his team, exhausted from months of relentless pursuit, now operated with a single-minded obsession to locate Emily Hartman, to uncover the truth behind her disappearance, and to finally illuminate the shadow that had haunted their streets for months. Every new lead, every fragment of evidence, became a high-stakes piece of a complex puzzle, each one bringing them closer to a revelation that could shatter the quiet facade of the town forever. The breakthrough began with an old phone record, retrieved from a backup that had previously been overlooked. Among the mundane exchanges of calls, texts, and voicemails, a single number stood out. Short, precise, connected directly to a burner phone, the activity suggested communication that had been deliberately obscured, hidden from friends, co-workers, and even law enforcement. Cross-referencing that number with vehicle registrations revealed the link to Gregory Miles, a detail that had eluded them until now. It was small, almost invisible, but when combined with the notebook, the photographs, and multiple witness accounts, it illuminated a terrifying pattern. Miles had been coordinating Emily's movements, orchestrating his presence, and maintaining an invisible stranglehold over her life. Lawson revisited the cabin in Wise County once again, This time, the team came prepared with forensic kits, infrared cameras, and a renewed sense of urgency. Every inch of the property was examined meticulously. Beneath a loose floorboard, they found a USB drive, its casing worn and scratched. When analyzed, the drive contained hundreds of images and videos, some of Emily alone, some of her interactions with others, and a number of files with timestamps that coincided with sightings and surveillance footage already collected. What struck the team most was the progression. The images documented Emily's growing awareness of being watched. Some frames captured subtle expressions of fear, hesitation, uncertainty, the realization that someone was orchestrating her life, encroaching upon her freedom, shaping her reality without her consent. The discovery sent a ripple of dread through the investigation. Miles was not merely a stalker. He was meticulous, calculating, psychologically manipulative, and frighteningly patient. His attention to detail suggested he had anticipated potential interventions, had mapped the detective's possible moves, and had ensured that his actions left no overt trace. The depth of his obsession was almost surgical, and the realization left the team uneasy, aware that they were dealing with a mind both dangerous and methodically disciplined. At the same time, public awareness of the case intensified. News reports described the discovery of the cabin, the photographs, and a detailed timeline of Emily's disappearance. Community meetings became tense, neighbors whispering about the dangers of proximity, of trust, of the ordinary routines that had once seemed harmless. Denton, a town that had prided itself on the normal rhythms of small-town life, now existed under a veil of suspicion. People watched one another. Cars slowed suspiciously as they passed homes, and the ordinary hum of daily life was punctuated by the unspoken fear of an invisible predator still at large. Investigators expanded their focus beyond the immediate circle. Miles's employment history revealed transient jobs that had allowed him to move undetected, avoid scrutiny, and continue his obsessive monitoring without interruption. Financial records, cross-checked with time-stamped evidence from the USB drive, suggested careful planning. He had allocated resources to cover transportation, surveillance tools, and the quiet acquisition of information about Emily and those around her. Every action was deliberate, precise, a clear indication of premeditation that heightened the stakes. Then came the call from the lab, a breakthrough in digital forensics. Analysis of Miles's computer, recovered through a court-authorized seizure, revealed encrypted files, meticulously organized, containing not only further images and videos of Emily, but also detailed notes about the investigation itself. Miles had been tracking the police, predicting their movements, noting changes in procedure, and documenting every intervention attempted to locate her. It was a revelation that underscored the predator's cunning. Emily had been ensnared by a man whose obsession extended beyond her, encompassing the very forces trying to rescue her. Lawson convened a strategy meeting, the room thick with tension and exhaustion. Maps, timelines, photographs, and digital logs were spread across tables, each detective contributing observations, hypotheses, and potential leads. The pattern was emerging with increasing clarity. Emily had likely been moved to multiple locations, isolated, observed, and manipulated. The goal of the perpetrator, while not fully understood, was evident in his methodology: control, surveillance, and the creation of an environment where Emily's movements and choices were dictated by his unseen hand. During the review, a detective noted a peculiar detail in one of the videos, a reflection in a window, partially obscured, of a face that was not Emily's, a feature that suggested a second, unidentified participant in the unfolding events. This introduced a new variable into the investigation, a potential accomplice or witness whose presence had been previously unnoticed. The implications were staggering. The scale of the crime expanded beyond a single stalker, suggesting a coordinated effort or the presence of an observer complicit in some way, intensifying the urgency and the stakes. Law enforcement returned to the community for additional canvassing. New witnesses were interviewed, and several reported sightings of a vehicle matching Miles's description parked in inconspicuous locations at unusual hours. One elderly couple recounted a man who seemed familiar, blending into the neighborhood, watching from a distance, disappearing before he could be identified. Another neighbor mentioned lights in a supposedly abandoned storage unit that flickered late at night. Each new piece of information was painstakingly documented, cross-referenced, and analyzed, slowly constructing a framework for potential intervention. Meanwhile, forensic psychologists provided critical insight into Miles's behavior. They described a calculated escalation of control, the collection of images and information, the careful observation of Emily's responses, and the deliberate creation of anxiety and uncertainty in her daily life. The analysis suggested not only obsession, but a desire for dominance and manipulation, a psychological grip that extended beyond the ordinary constraints of stalking. The implication was chilling. Emily had been ensnared in a meticulously constructed reality, one that sought to anticipate her every move, constrain her choices, and render her almost powerless. As December approached, the pressure mounted. The investigation was no longer merely about discovery. It had become a race against time, a battle of wits between investigators and a predator whose patience and cunning were formidable. Every lead, every piece of evidence, every observation was treated with the utmost scrutiny. The town remained on edge, aware that the case was far from resolved, yet tentatively hopeful that breakthroughs could finally bring closure. In this heightened state of urgency, the detectives identified a new location linked to Miles through utility records and digital surveillance. A nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town, previously unnoticed, appeared to be a focal point of activity. Vehicles were traced, movements logged, and patterns established, creating a narrow window in which a coordinated intervention could be attempted. The risk was immense, yet the opportunity could not be ignored. Every decision carried weight. Every moment could determine whether Emily was found alive and whether the predator's carefully constructed web would finally be dismantled. The tension was unbearable, palpable in the precinct, reflected in every photograph, map, and document. Lawson felt the weight of months of investigation pressing down, the responsibility of a community's fear, the desperate hope that Emily's story might still have a chapter of rescue, not loss. The case had evolved from a missing person report to a psychological labyrinth, a portrait of obsession that stretched beyond ordinary comprehension, demanding ingenuity, precision, and courage from those tasked with unraveling it. And through it all, one question haunted the team relentlessly. What was the final act of this meticulously orchestrated crime, and how close were they to witnessing it unfold in its most terrifying, shocking form? The answer lay just beyond the reach of certainty, in the hidden spaces, the quiet corners, and the faintest traces of a presence that had eluded detection for months. Denton held its collective breath, caught between fear, hope, and the chilling awareness that the unknown could reveal itself at any moment, with consequences that would ripple through the town forever. December deepened into a relentless gray, the skies over Denton heavy and low, as if the town itself bore witness to the tension that had gripped it for months. Detective Lawson could feel the weight of every unanswered question pressing down, a constant ache in his chest, a reminder that Emily Hartman's fate still hovered somewhere between the possible and the unthinkable. Every report, every lead, every minor discovery had been meticulously documented, yet the case remained a labyrinth of shadows, each turn revealing another layer of calculated obsession. The breakthrough came in the quietest, most unassuming of ways. An assistant at the photo lab, re-examining old negatives, noticed a faint detail that had previously been dismissed, a small reflection in a window, almost imperceptible, captured in one of the earlier photos of Emily walking near her apartment. The reflection was of a face, partially obscured, and a vehicle, familiar to the investigators from previous sightings. What made it extraordinary, however, was that the reflection revealed not one, but two individuals. At first, Lawson hesitated to believe it. Two people? Could Miles have been working with someone, a partner, or an accomplice, orchestrating Emily's disappearance with a precision and patience that surpassed understanding? The team immediately cross-referenced this new discovery with every other piece of evidence. Surveillance footage, witness statements, cabin photographs, all were revisited with fresh eyes. Slowly, the pattern crystallized. Miles had indeed not been alone. A second figure, operating almost invisibly, had been assisting, perhaps monitoring investigators, perhaps manipulating Emily in ways that had remained unnoticed. The realization sent a chill through the room. This was not a simple case of obsessive stalking. It was a coordinated, calculated act, a psychological labyrinth in which Emily had been ensnared. The next step was critical, identifying the second figure. Digital forensic experts scoured Miles's computer, analyzing encrypted files, hidden folders, and metadata embedded in photographs. At first, the data appeared confusing, fragmented, almost deliberately misleading. But persistence revealed connections, repeated mentions of a name, subtle references embedded in file structures, a digital trail left almost negligently. The second person was revealed, a woman, someone known to Miles, whose presence had been almost ghost-like, assisting in observation, documentation, and manipulation. Every carefully orchestrated movement Emily had made, every variation in her routine, had been cataloged by two pairs of calculating eyes. The revelation shocked the investigators. Denton's quiet streets, once considered safe, had been watched not by a single predator, but by a coordinated effort of two individuals, each complementing the other's control. The psychological implications were staggering. Emily's fear, subtle at first, had likely escalated as she sensed, subconsciously, that something was amiss, that her life had become a controlled performance in which she had no agency. The photographs, timestamps, and notes all pointed to a meticulously choreographed exercise in dominance and surveillance. Lawson and his team moved quickly to expand surveillance and map patterns. Miles's movements, when combined with those of the second figure, revealed specific locations, times of increased activity, and potential hideouts. An abandoned storage facility on the outskirts of Denton, long overlooked, emerged as a probable site of temporary containment. Security checks, utility records, and minor traffic infractions were cross-referenced to build a precise timeline. The urgency was overwhelming. Investigators knew that every delay increased the risk to Emily, should she still be alive, and the potential for the predators to adjust, disappear, and cover their tracks. As the investigation intensified, forensic analysis of the cabin's USB drive revealed more chilling details. Video files captured not just Emily alone, but interactions with the second individual, subtle manipulations, moments where the predator's presence was orchestrated to elicit specific reactions. The psychological torment, the control, the anticipation of every move became apparent in frame after frame. Each image was a testament to patience, obsession, and a cold, calculated cruelty that had evaded detection for months. The investigators felt the gravity of what they were uncovering. This was not just a crime of disappearance. It was an intricate web of psychological manipulation designed to dominate and erase Emily's autonomy. Community pressure mounted. Local news outlets reported the discovery of the second figure, increasing public awareness and heightening anxiety across Denton. Neighborhood meetings became tense. Residents shared sightings, recounted odd behaviors, and collectively processed the terrifying reality that Emily's vanishing had not been random, but a deliberate orchestration by individuals who had exploited the town's trust and invisibility. Denton, once defined by normalcy and routine, had become a landscape of suspicion, fear, and vigilant observation. The investigators coordinated with state and federal agencies, expanding their net to include communications analysis, pattern tracking, and real-time surveillance. Every lead, every piece of minutiae became critical. The investigation had transformed into a meticulous, high-stakes operation, balancing urgency with caution. The goal was clear: locate Emily, apprehend Miles and his accomplice, and finally bring closure to a case that had haunted both the community and the detectives for months. Then came a tip that defied expectations. A neighbor, previously overlooked during canvassing, reported seeing a vehicle matching the description of Miles's dark car parked near a remote industrial area. What caught attention, however, was the timing. The sighting coincided with a sequence in the USB videos showing Emily being led to a similar location. Investigators immediately mobilized, mapping routes, coordinating teams, and preparing for intervention. Every movement was calculated, every decision weighed, as the potential for confrontation loomed. Upon reaching the industrial area, the detectives discovered subtle signs of recent occupancy: tire tracks in soft dirt, disturbed vegetation, and remnants of a makeshift living area. Clues that suggested the predators had established a temporary base. The attention to detail was staggering. Items were carefully hidden, leaving minimal trace, yet their presence could no longer be denied. The realization intensified urgency. Emily's fate was likely tied to this location, and immediate action was necessary to prevent further harm. Lawson prepared his team with precision. Each officer understood the stakes, aware that missteps could endanger Emily or allow Miles and his accomplice to vanish entirely. Surveillance was established, patterns were monitored, and a plan of engagement formulated. Every movement of the perpetrators was anticipated through careful cross-referencing of timestamps, vehicle activity, and behavioral patterns. The tension was suffocating. The months of investigation had led to this pivotal moment, and the outcome remained uncertain. In parallel, forensic psychologists provided critical insights into likely behavioral responses. They predicted Miles's reaction patterns, the possible interventions by his accomplice, and the psychological state of Emily, whose awareness of being controlled likely heightened over time. The analysis guided the tactical approach, suggesting both the optimal timing and method for engagement to maximize the chances of recovery and minimize risk. As night fell over Denton, the industrial area lay under observation. Lights from unmarked vehicles flickered, shadows moved cautiously across warehouses, and every sound, wind, creaking metal, distant footsteps, was analyzed. The town outside slept uneasily, unaware that months of obsession, fear, and meticulous planning had brought investigators to the brink of confrontation. Emily Hartman's life, previously invisible, hidden, and manipulated, now rested in the balance between the calculated control of her abductors and the relentless determination of the detectives. And in the quiet hum of the night, one thought dominated the minds of those involved. The end game was near, the shocking twist, long foreshadowed by months of evidence, and intuition was about to reveal itself, and Denton's collective nightmare, months in the making, would either reach its horrifying climax or finally dissolve into the relief of resolution. Every second mattered. Every decision carried weight, and the invisible threads of control, obsession, and fear were poised to collide with the relentless pursuit of justice. The night was suffocatingly still, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, makes every creak of a tree, every rustle of a distant animal, impossible to ignore. Detective Lawson and his team had positioned themselves strategically around the industrial lot, each officer aware of the gravity of what was about to unfold. Months of investigation, sleepless nights, obsessive cross-referencing of clues, and painstaking analysis all converged on this single moment. Emily Hartman's fate was now tangible, not just a theory etched in photographs or hidden notes, but a living reality that hung in the balance between the calculated control of Gregory Miles and his accomplice, and the relentless determination of law enforcement. Every movement in the lot was scrutinized through night vision scopes, thermal imaging, and handheld cameras. A faint flicker of light through a warehouse window revealed a shadow moving with deliberate caution. Investigators could just make out the outline of a vehicle, the same dark car that had haunted their surveillance for months. The predators, sensing activity outside, began to react. Subtle shifts, figures darting from one shadow to another, the careful closing of blinds, all indicators of heightened awareness. The team's pulse quickened. Every breath, every heartbeat, every calculated step brought them closer to resolution or disaster. Lawson signaled, and officers moved in methodically, surrounding the building, communicating through hand signals and low whispers. The objective was clear: apprehend Miles and his accomplice, secure Emily, and prevent any chance of escape or retaliation. Every precaution had been taken. The patterns predicted by forensic psychologists suggested potential traps, evasive maneuvers, and the psychological state of both perpetrators. Yet despite preparation, a sense of unpredictability remained. The unknown always lingered, a shadow that could turn the night into chaos. Inside the warehouse, Emily's presence was faintly perceptible. Evidence suggested she had been moved recently, disoriented, and closely monitored. The team approached the entry point with caution, aware that one wrong move could trigger a response from Miles and his accomplice. Thermal imaging confirmed 2 heat signatures, separate from Emily's, moving within the building. The predators were not idle. They were alert, orchestrating their own defense, unaware that their meticulous control had been mapped and anticipated. Lawson's voice was a low whisper over the radio, coordinating the final approach. Officers fanned out, covering exits, potential hiding spots, and vantage points. The tension was almost unbearable, the accumulated months of obsession, investigation, and fear converging into a single, electrifying moment. Every detail mattered. Floorboards, windows, shadows, reflections, and the faintest trace of movement could signal an opportunity or a threat. Then came the first visual confirmation. A window flickered, and there she was, Emily Hartman, huddled, cautious, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. The team paused, holding their collective breath, aware that her survival and safety depended on precision, timing, and restraint. Any abrupt action could provoke Miles or his accomplice, endangering the very person they had come to rescue. The operation unfolded with meticulous coordination. Lawson signaled a silent breach, and officers moved simultaneously from multiple angles. Lights off, weapons ready but not drawn unless provoked. The air was charged with anticipation. Inside, Miles and his accomplice attempted to reposition, seeking advantage, but the investigator's strategy had anticipated their likely responses. The dance of predator and pursuer reached its apex. Every movement was a test of wits, speed, and precision. Suddenly, a shadow emerged at the far corner of the room. Miles, attempting to flee toward a rear exit. An officer intercepted, cutting off the path, forcing him to confront the reality that he was no longer in control. Simultaneously, another officer secured the accomplice, who had frozen, realizing that the intricate web of manipulation and control had finally collapsed. In less than moments, the chaos of months of surveillance, fear, and manipulation distilled into decisive action. Emily was secured, Miles restrained, and the accomplice contained. Emily's initial reaction was disbelief, a mixture of relief and residual terror. She had been watched, monitored, manipulated, and isolated for months. Her movements orchestrated by 2 individuals whose patience and obsession had nearly erased her sense of autonomy. As she was guided out into the fresh air of night, the first sensation she felt was the cold, sharp wind against her face, a physical reminder that the world outside, though unpredictable and fraught with danger, still existed. Lawson and his team offered quiet reassurance, their presence a stark contrast to the months of fear she had endured. For the first time in months, the town of Denton breathed collectively, though quietly, aware that the nightmare had reached a temporary resolution. Miles and his accomplice, once shadows in photographs, notes, and witness accounts, were now tangible, real, and accountable. The evidence collected, the USB drives, hidden photographs, meticulous notes, and digital correspondence, would form an unassailable case, documenting the extent of obsession, control, and manipulation inflicted upon Emily. As dawn approached, investigators reviewed every element of the operation, cross-checking timelines, evidence, and statements. The intricacy of Miles's planning became fully apparent. He had mapped routines, anticipated interventions, and maintained surveillance with a level of patience and precision that was almost unimaginable. His accomplice, initially unnoticed, had amplified the scope of control, ensuring that Emily remained disoriented and isolated. Together, they had created a psychological labyrinth from which escape seemed impossible, until the coordinated efforts of law enforcement intervened. Emily, finally safe, began the process of recounting her experience. Her testimony, fragmented and cautious, provided insight into the psychological pressure she had endured, the subtle manipulation, the constant observation, and the calculated movements designed to erode confidence and independence. Each detail she shared reinforced the depth of planning, obsession, and intent behind her abduction. Forensic psychologists would later note that her resilience in the face of such sustained psychological control was remarkable, a testament to human endurance even under extreme duress. Community response was immediate. Denton awoke to the news of Emily's safe recovery and the apprehension of the perpetrators. Relief was palpable, though tempered by shock and the lingering awareness of what had occurred. Conversations at workplaces, schools, and homes revolved around disbelief that such meticulous manipulation could occur undetected. The town's sense of safety, though restored in part, bore scars of fear, awareness, and vigilance. Residents would remember for years the dark period when normalcy had been invaded by unseen eyes and patient obsession. Law enforcement continued the investigation, documenting every detail, reconstructing the sequence of events, and preparing for prosecution. Miles and his accomplice faced charges ranging from kidnapping and unlawful confinement to stalking and psychological manipulation. The evidence amassed over months, photographs, USB drives, notebooks, surveillance footage, and witness testimony, formed an airtight case, leaving little room for doubt or defense. The meticulous planning of the predators, once their greatest strength, had become their downfall, captured through the very diligence that they had sought to evade. Emily's recovery marked a turning point, not only for the investigation, but for the community. Denton, once haunted by fear and uncertainty, began a slow process of restoration. Neighborhoods reopened with cautious optimism. Conversations resumed without the heavy shadow of suspicion, and the town collectively processed the events that had unfolded over months. While the psychological impact of Emily's abduction remained, the tangible presence of justice and resolution offered a foundation for healing. Detective Lawson, reflecting on the months of pursuit, noted the critical elements of success: patience, meticulous analysis, understanding of psychological behavior, and coordination with a skilled team. The case, long dormant, had been revived through persistent attention to detail, cross-referencing of seemingly minor clues, and unwavering determination. The cold case label, once a symbol of uncertainty and frustration, had been transformed into a narrative of resolution, demonstrating the potential for closure even in the most complex and psychologically intricate investigations. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation, as Denton prepared to witness the culmination of months, even years, of investigation, fear, and obsessive pursuit. Detective Lawson sat near the prosecution table, files meticulously organized, evidence cataloged, and every photograph, video, and document ready to convey the chilling narrative of Gregory Miles and his accomplice. Outside, the town buzzed with whispered speculation. The weight of a community's anxiety carried into the courtroom, where justice would finally confront the methodical darkness that had haunted Emily Hartman. From the moment the judge entered, silence prevailed. The press, eager for every detail, filled the back rows with cameras flashing intermittently, microphones poised to capture statements, and reporters scribbling notes as though the act of writing could somehow encapsulate the months of terror endured by a town and its citizen. Emily, seated at the witness table, appeared fragile but resolute, her presence a living testament to survival and resilience. Each eye in the room was fixed on her, aware that the testimony about to be delivered would unravel the calculated web that had so carefully ensnared her. The prosecution began with a precise and deliberate presentation, laying out the timeline from Emily's final days in Denton to the discovery of the cabin in Wise County. Every photograph, every USB file, every piece of forensic evidence was introduced, forming a narrative that left no room for doubt. The meticulous surveillance, the obsessive collection of images and notes, the coordination between Miles and his accomplice, all illustrated a chilling pattern of psychological domination. Witnesses recounted Emily's routines, minor sightings of the dark vehicle, the hooded figure, and finally, the harrowing night of her rescue. The courtroom collectively absorbed the narrative, the tension growing as each detail compounded the gravity of the crime. Gregory Miles and his accomplice sat impassively, their faces masks of calm, yet subtle movements betrayed tension. A foot tapping, a hand nervously adjusting a sleeve, a fleeting glance exchanged. The defense attempted to frame the narrative as obsession without malicious intent, minimizing the psychological and emotional impact on Emily, suggesting impulsivity over premeditation. But the evidence told a different story. Months of detailed planning, surveillance, and manipulation pointed unequivocally to a calculated, predatory pattern. The jury, attentive and silent, absorbed every visual, every note, every sequence of events, each element reinforcing the depth of premeditation and control. Emily's testimony was the most pivotal element. She recounted the subtle but relentless psychological manipulation, the awareness of being watched, the sense of control gradually eroded by two figures operating in concert. Her voice, at times trembling, at times steady, carried the weight of months spent navigating fear, uncertainty, and isolation. She described the hidden cameras, the notes, the subtle cues that indicated her movements were anticipated and controlled. Each word conveyed the horror of obsession brought to life, and the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath, captivated and horrified by the clarity of her account. The cross-examination attempted to sow doubt, focusing on perceived inconsistencies, the vagueness of memories, and the challenges inherent in recollecting events under trauma. Yet each question, each attempt to undermine credibility, was met with precise, coherent responses that illustrated not only Emily's resilience, but the undeniable reality of the predator's actions. Forensic experts corroborated her account, describing the behavioral patterns of Miles and his accomplice, detailing the deliberate escalation of control and the psychological mechanisms employed to maintain dominance over a conscious and perceptive individual. Evidence from the cabin and the USB drive was presented in detail. Every photograph, every video frame, and every note was introduced systematically, creating an unbroken chain linking the actions of Miles and his accomplice to Emily's prolonged fear and confinement. Digital forensics experts explained encryption patterns, metadata, and file structures, highlighting the careful planning that had allowed the predators to evade detection for months. The jury was shown the extent of the coordination, the obsession, and the cold calculation that had underpinned Emily's abduction, transforming abstract terror into concrete, provable criminal action. As the trial progressed, witnesses recounted community impact, the fear that had gripped neighborhoods, the changes in behavior, the collective anxiety that had rippled through Denton. Parents described the vigilance with which children were watched, neighbors detailed the subtle observation of unknown individuals, and local business owners explained how daily routines had been altered by the pervasive unease. Each account reinforced the psychological and social ramifications of the crimes, demonstrating that the effects extended far beyond Emily, touching every corner of the community. The defense attempted to argue mental instability, suggesting that the predators had acted without full comprehension of consequences. However, the meticulous documentation, financial planning, and systematic execution directly contradicted such claims. Experts explained that the actions reflected a high degree of awareness, patience, and methodical decision-making, characteristics inconsistent with impulsivity or diminished capacity. The narrative of control, manipulation, and calculation was reinforced, leaving the jury with little room for ambiguity. Days of testimony culminated in the presentation of the final evidence. A reconstructed timeline detailing every step of Emily's ordeal, cross-referenced with digital records, witness accounts, and forensic analysis. The narrative was precise, coherent, and irrefutable, a testament to months of painstaking investigation. Visualizations illustrated the coordinated actions of Miles and his accomplice, the alignment of surveillance, movement patterns, and strategic positioning, leaving no doubt that the crimes were deliberate, premeditated, and psychologically coercive. When closing arguments commenced, the prosecution emphasized the human impact, the months of terror, the erosion of Emily's autonomy, the psychological manipulation, and the courage she had demonstrated in surviving and recounting her experience. They underscored the community's trauma, the ripple effects of fear, and the necessity of justice to restore a sense of security and closure. The defense argued for mitigation, highlighting emotional instability, but the weight of evidence and expert testimony made this approach increasingly untenable. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. The courtroom held its collective breath as the foreperson stood, the words resonating through the air like a verdict for the town itself. Guilty on all counts. Relief, shock, and an overwhelming sense of closure washed over the community, tempered by the lingering awareness of what had occurred and the months of psychological manipulation Emily had endured. Miles and his accomplice were taken into custody, their meticulously crafted web of control dismantled by the persistence, expertise, and resolve of law enforcement. In the aftermath, Denton grappled with the residual shock. The streets, once shadowed by fear, began to recover their ordinary rhythm. Emily, supported by family, friends, and professionals, embarked on the process of healing, reclaiming autonomy, and reconstructing a sense of safety. The town, though scarred, found in the resolution a cautious optimism, a reminder that even the most meticulously concealed crimes could be unraveled through diligence, courage, and persistence. Detective Lawson reflected on the magnitude of the case. The cold case label, once a symbol of unresolved fear, had transformed into a narrative of triumph over obsession and manipulation. The intricate planning of Miles and his accomplice, once a source of terror, had become their undoing, exposing the limits of control and the power of sustained, methodical investigation. The case would become a reference point in law enforcement circles, illustrating the importance of psychological profiling, community engagement, and persistence in unraveling even the most complex and meticulously orchestrated crimes. Months later, Emily's story resonated beyond Denton. News outlets, documentaries, and criminal psychology studies examined the case, analyzing the methods, motivations, and psychological dynamics at play. The town remained vigilant, carrying the memory of what had transpired, but also a profound appreciation for the resilience, determination, and courage that had brought resolution to a nightmare long endured. Even as life began to normalize, the echo of the case lingered. Photographs meticulously organized, USB drives recovered, cabin notebooks preserved as evidence. All reminders of the patient, obsessive control that had nearly succeeded, and the extraordinary persistence that had ultimately prevailed. Denton had confronted darkness in its most calculated form, and through vigilance, courage, and relentless pursuit of truth, had emerged with both justice and closure. Winter settled over Denton with a quiet heaviness, the kind that pressed against windows and seeped into the streets, carrying with it the collective relief and lingering unease of a town forever altered. The trial had concluded, justice had been served, but the emotional and psychological ripples of Emily Hartman's ordeal continued to echo through every corner of the community. Families walked more cautiously, neighbors spoke in hushed tones, and a persistent awareness lingered in the air, a reminder that even ordinary places could conceal extraordinary darkness. Emily, though physically unharmed, faced the slow, deliberate process of reclaiming her life. Therapy sessions, counseling, and support networks became central to her recovery. Each step a careful reconstruction of autonomy eroded over months of manipulation. She recounted her experiences with meticulous attention to detail, providing crucial insights into the behavior of Gregory Miles and his accomplice, contributing to law enforcement's understanding of obsessive control and psychological coercion. Her courage became both a personal milestone and a touchstone for the community, a symbol of resilience in the face of calculated terror. Law enforcement, meanwhile, began the task of cataloging and preserving evidence for training, research, and legal purposes. The USB drives, photographs, cabin notes, and surveillance documentation were analyzed to create comprehensive profiles of predatory behavior, illustrating the methods of control, observation, and psychological manipulation employed by Miles and his accomplice. Each detail, no matter how minute, contributed to a growing body of knowledge intended to prevent similar cases, enhance investigative techniques, and inform the public about subtle warning signs of stalking and obsession. Community meetings convened to address ongoing concerns, with local leaders, law enforcement, and mental health professionals participating in open dialogues. Residents shared their experiences, fears, and reactions to the events, fostering a sense of collective processing and gradual healing. The conversations were candid, sometimes painful, but essential to restoring trust and security within the town. Neighborhood watch programs gained renewed attention, with residents organizing patrols and awareness campaigns to ensure vigilance without fostering paranoia. The media coverage of the case, both local and national, amplified its significance. Documentaries, news specials, and articles dissected every aspect of the investigation, highlighting the meticulous detective work, the psychological complexity of the predators, and Emily's remarkable resilience. Experts in criminal psychology, law enforcement, and victim advocacy were consulted, producing analyses that would serve as educational tools for years to come. The story became more than a single narrative. It evolved into a case study in human obsession, community vigilance, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Miles and his accomplice, incarcerated and facing lengthy sentences, became subjects of ongoing psychological evaluation. Experts sought to understand the dual dynamics of their relationship, the meticulous planning, and the patience required to sustain their manipulation over time. Their actions were dissected, revealing a combination of obsession, control, and collaborative reinforcement that had allowed them to evade detection for months. The findings contributed to broader understandings of criminal partnerships, psychological dominance, and the mechanisms by which fear and control can be systematically imposed on a target. Emily's personal journey continued to inspire awareness campaigns, speaking engagements, and advocacy work. She became a voice for those subjected to stalking, manipulation, and abduction, emphasizing the importance of vigilance, community engagement, and self-advocacy. Her story highlighted the subtle signs of obsession, unexplained sightings, repeated proximity, and psychological manipulation, providing practical knowledge to others and reinforcing the critical role of law enforcement in recognizing and responding to these patterns. Within Denton, life slowly resumed its ordinary rhythms, but the collective memory of the case remained vivid. Streets that once felt ordinary carried the shadow of months-long surveillance. Neighborhoods that had once been casual now maintained a heightened awareness. Parents, teachers, and community leaders took lessons from the ordeal, implementing educational programs and safety protocols to ensure that the vulnerabilities exposed by Emily's experience could be mitigated for others. The town's vigilance became a lasting legacy, a testament to resilience and communal responsibility. For Detective Lawson, the conclusion of the case was both professional achievement and personal reflection. Months of meticulous investigation, sleepless nights, and persistent attention to detail had culminated in resolution. Yet the emotional weight of the ordeal remained. The psychological toll on Emily, the manipulative cunning of Miles and his accomplice, and the community's collective trauma underscored the gravity of every decision made during the investigation. Lawson reflected on the delicate balance between urgency and caution, intuition and evidence, ultimately acknowledging the extraordinary effort required to untangle the complex web of obsession that had ensnared Emily. Legal proceedings continued as the appeals process unfolded, though the overwhelming weight of evidence made any challenge unlikely to succeed. Miles and his accomplice faced the full extent of legal accountability, their meticulously crafted control undone by diligence, persistence, and the coordinated efforts of a skilled investigative team. The courtroom, once a stage of tension and fear, now served as a symbol of accountability, the final assertion of justice against prolonged psychological and physical domination. Psychologists noted the long-term impact of the case, both on Emily and the community. Victims of stalking and manipulation often experience prolonged trauma, heightened anxiety, and disrupted social patterns. Emily's resilience, bolstered by therapeutic intervention and community support, serve as a model for recovery, while Denton's communal response highlighted the importance of awareness, vigilance, and collective action in mitigating the long-term effects of predatory behavior. The case became an instructive narrative in both professional and public contexts, illustrating the intersection of crime, psychology, and social responsibility. Months after the trial, Emily revisited familiar streets, each step a reclamation of autonomy and security. She walked past the apartment where her ordeal began, past the parks where her routines had been monitored, and past the cabins and industrial sites that had served as silent stages for the predator's obsession. Each step symbolized both endurance and triumph, a tangible reclaiming of a life nearly consumed by fear. The community observed with quiet support, acknowledging the courage required to confront both memory and environment, to inhabit spaces once marked by terror without succumbing to residual fear. In the broader context, law enforcement agencies used the case as a model for cold case resolution, emphasizing cross-referencing seemingly minor clues, integrating forensic technology with psychological profiling, and maintaining persistent engagement over time. The lessons learned extended beyond Denton, influencing protocols, training programs, and investigative methodologies nationwide. The meticulous attention to detail, combined with human intuition and psychological insight, demonstrated the potential to resolve cases that, at first glance, appeared unsolvable. Emily's story became part of an enduring narrative of survival, community resilience, and the capacity of dedicated investigators to unravel complex patterns of obsession and control. Even as life moved forward, the shadow of the case lingered as a cautionary tale. Residents remained aware that threats could emerge silently, often hidden in plain sight, and that the vigilance demonstrated during Emily's ordeal was not merely a reaction, but a sustained commitment to community safety. The town's legacy, shaped by months of fear, investigation, and resolution, became a blueprint for awareness, prevention, and the potential for closure even in the most complex and psychologically intricate cases. Detective Lawson, reflecting on the months and years invested, considered the delicate interplay of evidence, intuition, and persistence that had led to resolution. The case demonstrated that even the most meticulously constructed webs of control could be dismantled through diligence, psychological insight, and unwavering commitment. Emily's recovery, the community's healing, and the final conviction of Miles and his accomplice represented not only justice, but the affirmation that perseverance and skill could prevail over calculation and obsession. Just as Denton began to exhale, believing the nightmare had ended, a subtle, almost imperceptible detail emerged from the shadows of the past, one that threatened to upend the neat conclusion of the trial and the apparent resolution of Emily Hartman's ordeal. Detective Lawson, reviewing archived evidence for training purposes, noticed an anomaly in one of the photographs from the Wise County cabin. In the background, partially obscured, was a figure not previously identified, a man whose presence had been almost ghost-like, positioned in a way that suggested he had observed Miles and his accomplice, unnoticed and unrecorded in any other file or witness account. The discovery sent a shiver through the investigative team. Had there been a third participant, a silent observer whose motives and involvement remained unknown? The photograph was enhanced and analyzed frame by frame. Facial recognition software yielded inconclusive results. The image quality was poor, but certain characteristics, a distinct posture, the angle of approach, a subtle reflection in the window, indicated a deliberate, patient presence. Lawson felt the familiar pulse of tension, the sensation that had guided him through months of investigation, the sense that something critical, something hidden, remained just beyond the reach of clarity. The case, seemingly resolved, revealed its final, chilling layer. A spectator, possibly complicit, possibly merely curious, whose existence had been masked by the meticulous coordination of the primary perpetrators. The team revisited Miles and his accomplice's digital footprint, searching for any trace of interaction with this unidentified figure. Financial records, communication logs, and travel patterns were scoured, yet no definitive link could be established. It was as if the third presence existed only in the periphery, leaving whispers of influence without tangible evidence. The psychological implications were profound. Emily's ordeal had been orchestrated not only by two obsessive minds, but had potentially been overseen by a third, whose very invisibility added a layer of terror and uncertainty. Law enforcement quietly increased surveillance in Denton, monitoring for patterns consistent with this mysterious figure. Residents were alerted to remain vigilant, though details were carefully withheld to avoid unnecessary panic. The community, still processing the previous month's trauma, responded with renewed caution, sensing that even after justice had been served, remnants of the case lingered in unseen corners. The shadows of obsession, control, and surveillance were not fully banished, and the psychological tension persisted. Emily, informed of the new discovery, exhibited a mixture of fear, frustration, and determination. She had endured months of direct manipulation, yet the possibility of an unseen observer reignited old anxieties. Counseling sessions adapted to address this revelation, focusing on the management of residual trauma, awareness of potential threats, and strategies for maintaining autonomy and personal security. Her resilience, though tested once more, remained remarkable, a testament to the enduring strength cultivated through months of survival and recovery. The investigative team analyzed the sequence of events leading to Emily's abduction, cross-referencing the newly discovered figure with all known movements of Miles and his accomplice. While no direct intervention by the third party could be confirmed, certain anomalies, timing of vehicle movements, unexplained signals in the USB drive metadata, and subtle alterations in the cabin environment suggested the possibility that this individual had observed, perhaps influenced, or even encouraged aspects of the crime. The line between witness and conspirator blurred, leaving investigators with unsettling questions. How much had been orchestrated beyond the reach of Miles and his accomplice? What motives had guided this hidden presence? And how close had they come to altering the outcome of Emily's rescue? Public reaction was immediate once reports of the potential third party surfaced, though details remained cautiously vague. Media coverage highlighted the notion that even a solved case could harbor unseen layers, reinforcing both the fragility and resilience of community safety. Residents of Denton reacted with a mix of vigilance and trepidation. Neighborhood watch programs intensified, personal security measures were reassessed, and the collective awareness of hidden threats became a permanent fixture in the town's consciousness. The shadow of the unknown, though intangible, reinforced the narrative that control, observation, and obsession could extend beyond what was immediately visible or legally accountable. Digital forensics experts revisited the USB drives and photographic evidence, seeking any latent patterns or encoded signals that might indicate the third party's involvement. Enhanced imaging, metadata cross-referencing, and algorithmic pattern analysis yielded subtle irregularities. Timestamps slightly out of sequence, shadows inconsistent with primary sources, and photographic angles that suggested peripheral oversight. While these findings did not conclusively establish complicity, They indicated that the invisible presence had likely influenced the environment in ways previously unconsidered, leaving a haunting trace of manipulation and anticipation. Psychologists weighed in on the implications of the third-party observation. They noted that the existence of a hidden spectator could amplify the psychological impact on Emily, extending trauma even after physical threats were neutralized. The knowledge, or even suspicion, that unseen eyes had monitored her ordeal could perpetuate feelings of vulnerability, heighten hyper-awareness, and complicate the healing process. Emily's counseling incorporated strategies for acknowledging these residual threats while reinforcing autonomy, agency, and the understanding that survival and resilience could coexist with the knowledge of lingering uncertainty. The investigative narrative, already complex, now embraced the subtle tension of unresolved presence. Miles and his accomplice had been neutralized, their criminal influence curtailed, yet the photograph and accompanying anomalies suggested that the story's final layer might never be fully revealed. Lawson and his team documented the finding thoroughly, integrating it into training programs as a reminder that even meticulously solved cases could harbor unseen dimensions, and that vigilance, analysis, and psychological insight were essential to both resolution and prevention. Within the community, discussions shifted from immediate relief to reflective consideration. Denton's residents acknowledged that safety could never be absolute, and that even after justice, awareness remained paramount. Schools introduced programs on personal safety and observation skills, while local authorities emphasized ongoing engagement and vigilance. The case, long defined by obsession and control, became a permanent lesson in the complexities of human behavior, the unpredictable consequences of hidden actions, and the enduring importance of community cohesion. Emily herself became a voice not only for survivors of direct manipulation, but for those affected by unseen threats, emphasizing the significance of awareness, preparedness, and psychological resilience. Her story underscored the dual realities of survival and vigilance. One could recover, rebuild, and reclaim life while remaining mindful of the subtle, often hidden influences that persist even after apparent resolution. Detective Lawson, reflecting on the case's final twist, acknowledged the dual nature of justice and uncertainty. While Miles and his accomplice had faced the full measure of the law, the third party, if indeed complicit, remained unknown, a ghostly reminder that human behavior is rarely entirely contained, and that the shadows of obsession may linger long after physical control has been neutralized. The case became both a triumph and a cautionary tale, demonstrating the power of persistence, skill, and community engagement, while recognizing the limits of perception and the enduring mysteries that surround human intent. In the months that followed, Denton streets carried the quiet resilience of a town that had faced fear, manipulation, and obsessive control, emerging with vigilance, awareness, and a renewed commitment to safety. Emily's recovery, the legal resolution, and the lingering questions of a potential unseen observer converged to create a complex legacy, one that honored survival, reinforced justice, and acknowledged the perpetual tension between visible resolution and hidden influence. Even as daily life resumed, the town remained attuned to the possibility of unseen presence, the psychological lessons embedded in every corner, every routine, and every shadow. Months had passed since the courtroom had delivered its verdict, yet Denton still carried the echo of fear, suspense, and revelation. The streets, once bustling with the ordinary rhythms of small-town life, now bore an undercurrent of vigilance, a subtle tension woven into daily routines. Parents watched their children with renewed attentiveness. Neighbors exchanged glances laced with cautious awareness, and even the familiar hum of traffic seemed infused with the memory of months-long obsession that had threatened to consume a community. The resolution of Emily Hartman's ordeal had brought relief, but it had also left an indelible mark, a psychological residue that would shape Denton for years to come. Emily's life, though restored to a degree of normalcy, remained intertwined with a lingering presence of trauma. She attended therapy sessions with meticulous regularity, confronting not only the memories of direct manipulation, but also the residual anxiety sparked by the discovery of the potential third-party observer. Each session was a careful navigation between empowerment and vulnerability, a process by which she reclaimed autonomy while integrating the knowledge that unseen threats can persist even after apparent resolution. The psychological weight was considerable, yet Emily's determination and resilience shone through, a testament to human endurance in the face of prolonged and calculated psychological manipulation. Law enforcement, meanwhile, turned the case into a model for investigative excellence. Every detail of the months-long pursuit, photographs, USB drives, digital metadata, cabin notes, and behavioral patterns, was cataloged and analyzed, producing comprehensive training material for detectives and forensic analysts. The case became a benchmark in the field, demonstrating the necessity of meticulous evidence tracking, cross-referencing seemingly minor clues, and integrating psychological profiling with traditional investigative techniques. Its lessons extended far beyond Denton, shaping protocols, enhancing strategies for cold case resolution, and informing law enforcement nationwide about the subtle yet pervasive tactics of obsessive predators. The third-party observer, though never definitively identified, became a focal point of both intrigue and caution. Lawson and his team maintained a discreet monitoring program, reviewing communications, financial records, and local activity that might correlate with this mysterious presence. While no actionable evidence emerged, the mere possibility served as a psychological reminder to both the investigators and the community. Closure does not always equate to complete knowledge, and the invisible threads of control, obsession, and observation can persist beyond tangible resolution. Emily's advocacy work gained momentum. She became a voice for survivors of stalking, manipulation, and psychological control, emphasizing the importance of community awareness, early detection, and personal empowerment. Speaking engagements, workshops, and media appearances allowed her to share the lessons learned from her ordeal, providing practical guidance on recognizing subtle signs of predatory behavior and the value of immediate reporting. Her story resonated with individuals far beyond Denton, serving as both cautionary tale and source of inspiration for those confronting similar threats. Within Denton, the community's response evolved into sustained vigilance. Neighborhood watch programs were formalized. Local schools incorporated safety and awareness programs into curricula, and residents participated in workshops designed to enhance recognition of suspicious activity. The case had transformed the town's consciousness, instilling a permanent awareness that safety is not passive but active, and that the unseen dimensions of human behavior demand attention and preparedness. Detective Lawson continued to reflect on the complexity and depth of the investigation. The months spent tracking Miles and his accomplice, analyzing subtle photographic anomalies, and anticipating behavioral patterns had demonstrated the interplay between meticulous planning and intuitive insight. The unexpected emergence of a potential third-party observer reinforced a key lesson. Even most carefully resolved cases may harbor hidden layers, and vigilance, analysis, and attention to psychological nuance remain essential long after the apparent resolution. Forensic psychologists emphasize the broader implications of the case. The dual dynamics of Miles and his accomplice, combined with the potential influence of the third-party observer, illustrated the complex interplay between obsession, coordination, and covert surveillance. Their analysis contributed to criminal psychology literature, providing insights into the mechanisms by which control is exerted, the psychological impacts on victims, and strategies for law enforcement to detect and prevent similar patterns. The case became a template for understanding collaborative manipulation and the subtle dynamics of multi-perpetrator control. Emily's personal journey continued to intersect with public education. She collaborated with law enforcement to develop community outreach programs, focusing on early warning signs of stalking and manipulation. Her testimony, initially delivered under the intense scrutiny of a courtroom, now served as an educational resource, illustrating the importance of vigilance, reporting, and psychological resilience. The narrative emphasized that survival is not merely a matter of evading physical harm, but also recognizing and confronting subtle psychological coercion before it escalates into overt control. As Denton settled into a cautious normalcy, the collective memory of the ordeal remained vivid. Community members recounted their experiences during the months of fear, discussing odd sightings, unexplained behaviors, and subtle signs of surveillance that had previously seemed inconsequential. These discussions fostered a shared understanding of vulnerability, resilience, and the importance of proactive engagement, reinforcing the social fabric even as the psychological shadows of the case persisted. Law enforcement's ongoing review of evidence and procedures led to procedural innovations. Surveillance techniques were refined, digital analysis protocols were enhanced, and collaborative approaches integrating forensic psychology were institutionalized. The case, once a high-stakes cold case, became an enduring example of the power of persistence, interdisciplinary coordination, and the importance of integrating psychological insight into investigative practice. Miles and his accomplices' meticulous planning, once a formidable challenge, ultimately demonstrated the limits of control when confronted with sustained, methodical, and psychologically informed investigation. Emily, navigating the delicate balance between recovery and public advocacy, maintained a focus on empowerment. Her life, once dictated by fear and manipulation, now included deliberate choices about exposure, safety, and engagement. She shared her story with others, not merely as a recounting of events, but as a roadmap for recognizing and responding to obsession, surveillance, and psychological coercion. Her narrative highlighted both vulnerability and strength, illustrating the complexity of recovery and the potential for resilience even after prolonged exposure to calculated manipulation. The community, now vigilant yet resilient, continued to monitor the legacy of the case. Schools, neighborhoods, and local organizations maintained awareness programs, emphasizing proactive measures, observation, and reporting. The case's residual impact on collective behavior reinforced a cultural shift. Denton had learned that even solved cases carry ongoing implications, and that vigilance, awareness, and education are indispensable tools for community safety. Detective Lawson, reflecting on the entirety of the investigation and its aftermath, recognized the extraordinary interplay of skill, persistence, and psychological insight required to navigate the labyrinth of control orchestrated by Miles and his accomplice. The unexpected discovery of the potential third-party observer served as a final, haunting reminder that human behavior is layered, unpredictable, and often concealed. Yet the resolution, recovery, and educational outcomes demonstrated the capacity of law enforcement, community engagement, and personal resilience to confront, contain, and ultimately transform even the most insidious manifestations of obsession and control. In this phase of quiet vigilance, Denton embraced both relief and awareness. Emily's recovery, the legal accountability of Miles and his accomplice, and the enduring, though ambiguous, presence of a potential unseen observer coalesced into a narrative of triumph shadowed by caution. The lessons learned, codified into investigative practice, community education, and personal awareness, created a framework for ongoing resilience. Denton had faced a meticulously orchestrated nightmare, survived its psychological and social ramifications, and emerged with both justice and enduring vigilance.